wording to there we go. So the participants are starting to come in. Welcome everyone. Matt Clark, founder of Key Choice Lending and Metrics Property Group, and we're delighted to have Grant Abbott here today to talk about a whole range of things. His expertise is around self-managed super funds, estate planning, asset protection, and legal structuring. So we're really appreciative of his time. He's got 30 years experience. He's the chairman of Light Docs and SAP EPAA. I have no idea what that is. Sorry, Grant.
That's okay, buddy. Don't worry about that. A
CEO.
mouthful. So look, my wife used to call it salt and pepper. It's like, oh,
So
we remember that one.
it sounds impressive, but I know the rest of it. The CEO of Legal Back Office Proprietary Limited, self-managed super fund consultant for LY Legal, founder of SMS Strategies, and now Infinity. So they're an ASX listed class limited. So business highlights, Light Docs have been an outstanding platform with over 250 legal documents online, supporting a whole range of legal firms. They're an AI-driven advisor with tools in white labeling. So essentially, they're the support for a whole range of legal firms around Australia. His history is working with some of the leading companies in Australia around the world, former roles at Rothschild, KPMG, boutique law firms, and advisor to Federal Treasury and banks and wealth groups. So really grateful for your time, Grant. I'll hand it over to you and listen intently.
Okay, well, thank you, Matthew. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a really good property bent because obviously in your side, I want to give people the good oil. I'm also going to tell you about a few of the dangers that are coming up. And also want to make sure that one is we protect what you've got, and I'm going to show you some basic stuff, but then I'm going to show you some advanced stuff. And then what we're going to do is try and minimize as much tax as you possibly can. I'm also going to show you why negative gearing inside a self-managed super fund is 5 times better than outside. So there's a lot of stuff there. I know this is being recorded. You've got a big database there, Matthew. So this recording will go out to everyone. And again, the whole idea is that if you see anything at all in this session, it's going to go for about 45 minutes. Make sure you book in with Matthew. You can come and have a free appointment with me. That's pretty good because it's normally 1,200 bucks. But because of our relationship with Matthew, being an extraordinaire when it comes around to property loans, we waive that fee. So again, going back to what Matthew said, I've been around for a long, long time. I was actually commenting, making submissions on self-managed super funds before they were even around, so before the bills. And I spent 30 years. I've written 5 books on self-managed super funds. I'm just writing my 6th book now, which I think is probably the best one I've done. And seen it go from, yeah, look, I've done 2,500 presentations on self-managed super funds. And I've seen it virtually go from nothing to now $920 billion. In fact, and here's the first one for all of you who've got a business, the smart, smart, smart money is always, always to use your super to borrow money in your super, and Matthew can organise a SMSF loan for you to acquire a factory, an office, a farm, believe it or not, bed and breakfast. Listen to that one, bed and breakfast. These are all business property that the commissioner signed off on, motels which you can live in. All of those things can go in your self-managed superannuation fund. Now, you don't want to run the business in there. You want to have that outside in a trust or in a company that's shares are held by the trust, and then we want to lease it back. So what's the benefit of that one, Grant? Well, first off, you're going to be paying tax deductible rent from your business into your super fund, and the maximum tax rate, as I'll show you, will be 15% max. In fact, if we do it right, there won't be any tax on it. So you're getting tax from your business and putting it into a very secure environment. The other one is that if you hold it until age 60, you then sell your business or you sell your property after age 60, it's tax free. I mean, you might have bought it now for 300, sell it for $1 million at age 60. You don't have to pay any capital gains tax now. Thank you very much. Book that one away at any point in time. So again, the smart money does that. And then on top of that, you can then make deductible contributions of you and your spouse of up to $30,000 a year up to age 75. And that can then go down to pay principal and interest in the property. Although I do note, and this is pretty important, someone asked me the question yesterday, and it's taken me a while to think about that, is, well, if I pay down principal, like you're saying, Grant, then does that mean I can't redraw on it? You can't redraw on it. But the whole idea, pay off your interest, sock away some of your money, build up more of a deposit to then go and diversify into residential property. Does that make sense? So what we want to do, and again, as I said, the smart money's there because of the 900 trillion, the $900 billion, almost $1 trillion that's sitting in self-managed super funds, over 108 billion. So that's, well, it's about 15% is dedicated to business owners using their self-managed superannuation fund to buy business property in which they can then run their business. So it's a no-brainer. So anyone who's got a business, that's the first thing you could do. And you don't want to have your money wasted and put away in Australian Super or CBUS or somewhere like that. I mean, why would you want your money controlled by the unions? That I just don't understand when you've got these great opportunities there. The unions aren't going to let you to borrow to effectively invest in your business. And if you're like me, and I was telling Matthew before I got on that years ago, I ended up with gold. I think I bought about $300,000 of gold at $1,300, but I sold it at 2,600. So I made a profit. I was happy, but then I invested in this Lightyear Docs business. And again, that's just the way that I work. I prefer investing in something that I can actually deal with. I can work with. I'm sure there's plenty of you out there who like to reno, flip properties, all of that sort of stuff. So we're going to get into a lot of that. So that's the first strategy is self-managed super funds are great. But it comes down the other side is that I then had a client, and I see around about 5 or 6 clients a day. So again, through accountants and professional advisors like Matthew. So again, if you want to book in that meeting, get on the blower to Matthew because my time's very limited. So again, the first come, first served. And it was a builder and lovely guy, but one of his houses that he built had some defects and some problems. And of course, when you go down that track, we all know you're going to find a lawyer. So if you've got no wealth in your own name, so the first thing a lawyer's going to do is going to do a search. What properties does this guy have? What mortgages do they have? And if it's like, well, they've got a couple of $1 million in their equity in their home, well, happy days for everyone. So they took him to the cleaners, 2 years of litigation, almost liquidated, broke him personally, got him so much they ended up putting his next family home in a family protection trust. Sort of a right idea, but a stupid way of doing it. He was just so desperate to protect. So what I've built is now over the last 7 to 12 years is a lot of protection mechanisms in order to make sure you have the wealth, you build the wealth, but also it's protected. And that's the first thing is the self-managed super fund, great for taxation. Secondly, it's also fully protected from your trustee in bankruptcy. It's written into the Bankruptcy Act. Your trustee in bankruptcy can't touch your super. So that's happy days. But anyway, I'm going to go through, I'm going to use some slides and I'll just share the screen here so you can have a look. Ask questions along the way if you want. More than happy to take questions on the fly. I am going to go through, we'll probably go through about 30 or 40 strategies in a really quick succession. So again, you're going to need to watch this again, which is okay. I'm not going to do a full, we're not going to do a presentation. I'm going to do it like this because I'm going to flick between the slides. So there's my 5th book, 2018, wrote it by 2019. It was out of date because they changed the rules so much. But I've got a new one coming out. Likewise, this one is a really important one. I'd love you to read that. The paperback was sold out instantly, but you can still get it on Kindle. If you go to amazon.com.au, put in the name Grant Abbott, and then family wealth protection, and you can get it for $3.99. In fact, I think it might be on special for $2.99. So get and look at that. And it's 200 pages of strategies, knowledge, and it's going to take you into a lot more depth and detail in this. I had a client only a few hours ago. She read it from front to back and wondered if she could do it because she was in New Zealand. So she just said, we need to have it over there because Matthew will probably tell you the housing prices over New Zealand, what's happened to them, man? They've they've tanked like big time.
Sorry, I
So
was on mute. Tanked. Yes. Yeah, they have.
yeah, tanked on at big time. So she just wants to protect everything, which is really important. So have a read of that. The big things we want to protect ourselves for, and this is what your accountants and lawyers just don't know, I guarantee it. Litigation's increasing quite significantly. We do a lot of AI tools, and that's fantastic. So I do a lot of AI legal tools that effectively are putting lawyers and tax advisors out of business. So I had a chat with my partner on that. He said, "Are you worried about putting them out of business?" He said, "No, I don't care." And he's an accountant himself. So that means that you're going to end up with what are the lawyers going to do? And the lawyers, until they get AI litigation experience or AI judges, the lawyers are going to take a lot of litigation. And look, you get them, like even counsel, you don't pay counsel rates within the right time within a week. They send you a statutory demand. So it's just getting to that stage now that people's getting very aggressive. Family law is a huge issue. So you might be in a relationship with your spouse, lovey-dovey for 20 or 30 years, everything's fine. You pass away, give your assets to your kids, and a standard will is usually this is a simple but stupid will. So again, simple but stupid will, and 99% of lawyers will do it. So what they do is they give it to the spouse, and if the spouse is not alive, they then divvy it up to the kids. So the kids end up with money in their own name or properties or whatever. So they put it in the will. As soon as it hits there, that's now part of their portfolio. That's part of matrimonial property. And then if their spouse leaves, you're stuffed. So a classic one, my daughter's best friend, her grandmother, fantastic grandmother, decided rather than wait until she passed away, she was going to gift her grandchildren some money. Now, mind you, she had a few, had a bit of coin. She gifted her $2 million and bought her property for her in Brighton, down in Victoria. So not far from where Warning was. Then she was 25, her granddaughter. Her boyfriend of 4 years twigged on, up and left, when got a family lawyer. He ended up with $900,000 of it. She had to sell the property and she had to downsize. Can you believe that? The grandma made a downsize. It would have been a lot easier, and I'm going to show you this, if the grandmother had put money, set up a family protection trust for her daughter, for her granddaughter. In fact, probably a good idea for her daughter as well, put the money in there and then lent it to her granddaughter. Nil interest rate loan. Again, Matthew wouldn't like that because he's not going to make any commission on that, but that's okay, it's fine. So nil interest rate loan, but it means the daughter on a balance sheet, the granddaughter has a $2 million property, $2 million loan. Then we go to family court, and guess what? He doesn't get a brass razoo, which should have happened in the first place. So it's not one generation. We want to make sure we're protecting for generations to come. And when I get around to the Family Protection Trust, which is going to be very, very shortly, it limits any beneficiaries to it. And I'll explain where the protection comes in because most people don't understand. But it limits any protection to, not limits any beneficiaries to bloodline only, bloodline lineal descendants. So you don't end up with your motley relatives. It's only the kids and grandkids who share your bloodline. And there was a case just recently, in fact, I just did an article on it about an hour ago, Caldwell versus Caldwell, where a similar sort of trust was taken to court for the family law court, where a spouse of a child who received, who became a beneficiary under his father's estate, he was taken to court, and the spouse was saying, "Well, hold on, this is matrimonial property." And the judge just simply blinked and said, "Well, don't think so, because this is lineal descendants. You ain't a lineal descendant. We have to abide by what the trust deed says." And That's a fantastic move. So again, this is why we want to have these. So standard discretionary trusts just don't work because they actually include spouses in there. So they're dangerous, super, super dangerous. New South Wales. So where are most of your clients from, Matt? If you do.
Sorry, Melbourne and northern New South Wales, but we have a spread around Australia. So.
Okay, so let's be straight up here. So in New South Wales is the worst place in the world. Victoria's not too bad, not far behind. Well, we know, I'm sure you've got a lot of clients bleeding about the land taxes down in Victoria. It's just an absolute nightmare down there. But anyway, what we have there is that when you pass away, your will means nothing. I mean, I've already told you about the stupid will, which is the simple and stupid, but it doesn't matter what you put in your will. If you've got stepchildren in New South Wales, if you've got an ex-spouse, even if it was 30 years ago, they can all make a claim on your estate. So what happens there is they can lodge a claim within, depending on where it is, between 6 to 12 months, and then essentially it becomes a battle of wills. Everyone has to get involved and make a claim on the estate. Otherwise, if you don't make a claim, you miss out because it's only the dregs that ends up being looked after by the will. So I have seen instances in Victoria whereby a son who was 61 years of age, mum and dad both passed away. He robbed them blind, was a sex addict, drug addict, the whole thing. And the court awarded him $500,000 of the estate, even though they expressly said in the will, we don't want him in because he's robbed, sex addict, drug addict, and all that sort of stuff. So they gave him $500,000. New South Wales, case Cowper versus Cowper. We had a stepmom and then dad. Dad had a son from like 50 years ago, married mum, so they've been together for like 48 years, lived in the family home for 48 years. It was jointly owned. So when dad died, it went straight over to, his second wife. Problem there is then the son had had a bit of a malady, had a skiing accident, made a claim on the estate. So the $2 million property had to be sold, and the son got $700,000 on it, even though she'd lived in it for around about 48 years. So again, these are the sort of things we have to be very careful about. Anyone who works, yeah, look, ATO would soon as bankrupt you as do a deal these days. AI, I'm not going to talk about that, but I've been talking about this for a long time about the intergenerational transfer tax. It popped up in 2019. You go back and see some of my old YouTube videos, and I was talking about it, about the dangers that the government was going to introduce it. In fact, I'm just doing a case study now, is that if there's a bit of a correction in the share market, and also we start to see AI taking jobs out, which they are, it means the government's tax revenues are going to reduce. NDIS is going up like that. I mean, I'd love to have a punt on the NDIS. Age pensions are going up because there's a lot more baby boomers becoming retired. So budgets are going up, aged care costs are going up, healthcare is going up, NDIS is going up, but revenue is going down. So it means, what do? You've got to plug the hole. So how are you going to plug the hole? So you can either borrow, which they're doing quite a lot of, or they start to introduce wealth taxes from you rich people who've got more than $3 million. And you've already started to see them start to attack super with the wealth tax. Like if I take someone's balance at the start of the year, it's great at the end of the year, if they're over $3 million and they charge 15% on the gains that are attributable to the increase of the amount that's over $3 million. That's a wealth tax of 15%. Intergenerational transfer tax, which has been promulgated, and they talked about that at the, don't you love it, the Chalmers Productivity Summit. How is it that when you talk about increasing taxes, that's productivity? That just doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, so what they did there is they said, look, essentially, you'll have like a $500,000 tax-free threshold, and after that, it'll be taxed at 20%. Now they start there. In the UK, it's 60%. Sorry, $600,000, then it goes to 40%. But you're very lucky if you've got a farm. The threshold used to be 2 million. They've just dropped it to $1 million. and 60,000 farms had to be sold over the last 2 or 3 years to just pay for estate taxes. So these are the sort of things that we want to utilise. So this is what I want to do for you. I want to get you all into a castle. I want you to be in a position that you've got all your wealth protected, and then we've got this big, huge moat with alligators, crocodiles, piranhas, and all that, so that if anyone wants to start to attack, they're going to have to put their kahunas on the line. So let's go through our strategic products. So the first one's a family protection trust. You can see there, first bullet point, it's the Buckingham Palace of Trusts. So most discretionary trusts, in fact, trusts have been around since the 12th century. The benefit of a trust is that no beneficiary is entitled to any of the assets in the trust. So it means that effectively, if you get sued, well, you haven't got anything in there. You've just got a right to receive income from that trust. Now, there have been a couple of family law cases where there's just been one individual who's the trustee and one person who's the beneficiary. They've been able to say, well, hold on, there's no one else in there. It's really the alter ego is you. But again, if we do it right, we do bloodline. We don't use discretionary trusts, which are for tax purposes. You still get all the tax benefits. So here we have the kings and the queens. We've got the trustee, and usually it's like mum and dad, but we have a line of succession. So mum and dad or partners, then it goes down to the second generation and even down to the third generation. And then what happens is if one of the partners dies, then the other one takes over. It's like the king dies, well, the queen's there. Queen dies, the king takes over. Then at any point in time, in fact, we can do it beforehand or afterwards, the trust then splits. So I've got 3 kids, it splits into 3. Importantly, from that one, it's only bloodline beneficiaries. So it means that these children, if they're married or in a relationship, their partners can't come in. If they've got stepchildren, they can't come in. And likewise, it's only the original family protection appointors, who are these protectors, which are the mums and dads, that are actually included in there. We never put named beneficiaries in there because there have been cases down in Victoria where named beneficiaries who weren't looked after at any point in time were able to throw away the trustee, so it doesn't make sense. So we've thought long and hard about this Buckingham Palace of Trusts to look at how to protect it as best as possible. If you've got a business, so this is another aside, but again, I'm just throwing a lot of strategies because I want to see if any sticks for you so you can make an appointment. If you've got a business, quite often you'll have an operations company. I see so many people with shares in their operations company held by themselves. Silly move. What we want to do, because if you get sued, everything goes down. We want to move all our juicy stuff, our assets and IP, the name of our business, if you've got any core assets, databases, business processes, marketing processes, IP, we want to move them over into a separate company, which is held by our family protection trust, because this is where our crown jewels lie. So if our operations company goes down, well, we don't mind that at all. So if you've got an existing family trust, we can upgrade it to a family protection trust, and there's no capital gains tax or stamp duty on that. So again, we don't have to start again. We can actually rebuild. But if you've got a lot of dangerous property or you've got businesses already sitting in a existing trust, so we call it the Kensington Palace, then I'm going to make it a leading member discretionary trust, which is the same sort of thing, but don't worry about that one. So again, on that trust theme, the smart will, the protective will is that, and I'm going to give you 2 options here. If you've got one of these in existence, the smart will, because this has been going around a while, I've got splitting in there. I'm going to put everything in here in the will. I'm going to put everything in there. It's smart because then there's no stamp duty on any property is transferred. There's no capital gains tax on any property transferred, and it's stuck in there. This is our family protection vehicle that basically goes, the way we set it up, it goes into perpetuity. So there's no perpetuity period. But if you've got kids or grandchildren, I think that's a little bit wonky. I'll fix that up. There we go. If you've got kids or grandchildren who are under the age of 18, the problem about this one is if I distribute down to them, effectively they're taxed at like 45% tax. So I'll put in the will an option. I'll say, well, yeah, hey, I like this one because it's going around. But if not, then I'll use a testamentary trust. Guess what it looks like? same bloodline. I mean, it's the same technology, same strategy, different use. But this trust isn't created until you actually pass away, whereas the other one is already in existence. So I like the testamentary trust, but I might not use it because I've got a family protection trust. If you've got kids under the age of 18, absolutely, I'm going to use this one. One of the ones I always find, I'll get some young families in. And young families, I say, look, well, what happens if both of you die? Who's going to be the guardian of your kids? And so many people haven't even thought about that. And I find that not abominable. I just find that's really crazy because we've then got to work out if mum and dad die, well, who's going to be the next in line here? Who's going to look after the children? They won't be a beneficiary because it has to be for the children. So that's the testamentary trust. As I said before, the good thing about it is if I get to a testamentary trust, if I've got a will and I've got all my assets that are sitting in my own name, I have to worry about family provision claims. I won't go into promissory estoppel. I have to worry about ATO money. I have to worry about litigation, wealth taxes, and intergenerational transfer taxes. So stuff doesn't even get into the testamentary trust until that happens. Whereas if it's in a family protection trust, if I've already got this set up, then I'm pretty well right. Okay, so now we'll get to the magic. So the problem, and I'm sure you've got like this in your database, Matthew. So a couple of things. In fact, I'll go back here. I'll show us. I'll do our super one first. Traditionally, the Australian dream, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So everyone's read that, or Monopoly. I mean, we're trained on Monopoly since age 5. What do you do in Monopoly? Get a lot of houses, get rent from them, and all that. But the funny thing about Monopoly is if you land on someone's square and they've got motels on them, what happens? You have to pay a squid load of money. You might have other properties. So what do you have to do? You have to mortgage them. I want to make a Monopoly game which has actually got family wealth protection built in. So that if I land on someone's motel, it doesn't matter. I've still got all those properties that are going to be protected, which is right. As I said, with a self-managed super fund, you've got inbuilt protection. Now, let me just play a game. So unfortunately, we've got a lot of people in Australia, particularly baby boomers, who went through, super wasn't a real big thing in those days and no one trusted super. So they built up a nice big property portfolio, their principal place of residence that's got a lot of juicy equity in it, simply because prices have gone up. And they might have 2 or 3 investment properties. So I saw one client had 15 investment properties over in Western Australia. Now, that sounded good at the time. We aggregate, we accumulate, we use brilliant people like Matt who sets us up. We get borrowings and, we've got offset accounts. We can do all of this sort of stuff. So it's fantastic, absolutely important. We build up this portfolio. Then we get to age 60 or 65. And then what happens from there is that, well, we've given up our job. We've now got our new salary, which is from our rental properties. The problem about that, it's fully accessible. And then I've built up all these properties over a period of time that's got a large capital gain. So if I get in a bit of trouble, or I have to go into aged care or I have to do something, when I downsize or I sell one of these, then I'm up for capital gains tax. And if I don't, my children, when they get the property, or someone's going to have to pay capital gains tax along the line. And you're already starting to see the government saying, well, 50% discount is a little bit too much. I think we need to go down to 25%. And I guarantee that'll happen in the next 5 years. Now, I could do exactly the same thing. And I could buy properties inside my self-managed superannuation fund, exactly the same property. So I bought it, 20 or 30 years ago. I've got 15% rent in here. I can negatively gear in there. So, Grant, how do you negatively gear? Well, what I do is I go and get a property. I get an 80% LVR loan from Matthew. I'm then going to get my rental income. I'm going to get depreciation and also capital allowances. So that gives me deductions in my superannuation fund. But then I'm going to have rent that comes in there. And the rent that comes in there is going to be less than the deduction. So I end up with a tax loss in the fund. And you say, well, Grant, what's the point in that? Well, the point in that is I can put deductible contributions into super. So deductible contributions means I'm shifting money from a taxable place, whether it's my salary or wages, or from a company or trust I own, into super. No tax at that point. What happens though, if I claim a tax deduction, as I said, you should be claiming $30,000 a year each, you and your spouse. When it goes into the fund, it becomes assessable income like the rent. So unlike getting a rip-off in Australian super or CBUS, where they take 15% so-called contributions tax up front, that money goes in and is treated as assessable income of the superannuation fund, which we then start to reduce with those tax losses. So negative gearing is fantastic inside a self-managed super fund. But the big one is same, get to age 60 or 65, I retire, I've got the same investment portfolio, but I start up a pension, and at the moment, the pension balance in a super fund is like $2 million. So you and your spouse, if you can get to $4 million, happy days. You look at a $4 million property portfolio, you're getting some pretty serious coin there. First off, any money you take out of here is tax-free, but any rental income is also tax-free. So compare the pair, don't you love it? Compare the pair. You've got your investment property person outside paying full tax rates, and then inside the fund, they're not paying any tax at all. Likewise, if they want to sell the property, there'll be no capital gains tax. If they're smart, what they'll do is they'll sell all their properties over a period of time, cash out, and then live on that, or keep one or two properties, then they can give that money to the kids. I tell people, don't have too much in SMSFs, pull some money out, put it into your family protection trust, lend it to the kids for a deposit that Matthew can then use to then allow them to buy or upgrade their property. Again, this is what they're doing is they're using their future inheritance now. And the deposit they have obviously tax-free. So again, self-managed super fund is the best way of doing it. Now, what about our poor old investment property guys? Everyone's got their assets outside. So what do we do here? So we're not going to, I said family protection trusts are fantastic. SMSFs are fantastic. We can transfer business property into an SMSF. If that's commercial, motels, farms, all of that stuff. If it's in New South Wales, the stamp duty concession. Victoria, no, it doesn't really work, although there are some concessions there. But what we do is we've got all this wealth that's sitting in our own name. And the problem about that, I've already told you all the exposures from family provisions, family law. So what we want to do there is, if we want, we can keep all the properties in our own name because to transfer them in would be CGT and stamp duty. So what we do is we go down, get an analysis, someone like Matt, you work out, well, this is worth X amount of dollars. This is the liability. So my net wealth in that property is so much. And you know that from Monopoly. So I then work out my total net wealth. And then what I do is I transfer it over. So if I've got an offset facility where I can do a drawdown, I draw down and I transfer that cash over to my family protection trust. So I gift that over because at the moment in Australia, there's no gift taxes. I then lend it back to myself. Again, be nil interest. We could get aggressive if we want. This is my super aggressive one. Lend it back to, look, I'm not sure. I think might be a bit of part 4A. Lend back to our house at nil interest rate. Lend back to our investment property at market value interest rates. So we end up, because at the end, we want to make sure both properties are 100% geared. Everything has to be 100% geared. So we just do a roundabout. If we don't have an offset account, then what we do is we can use a promissory note like this. But at the end of the day, everything is 100% geared. So when we have a family, if someone dies, it doesn't make any difference. So again, if we've got joint ownership and assets, if all those properties end up in one spouse's name, she or he gets married, then effectively that's up for matrimonial property. Do this, and they can go and get married to their heart's content. They go to Thailand, they can do Philippines, they can do whatever they want, but all that money is then shielded for their bloodline. So it's okay. Last couple of strategies before I finish off. I was telling Matthew we do a lot of work with disabled children. Had a lovely couple today, couple of farmers, beautiful people. They had a home, they had a boy who was 43 years of age, cerebral palsy, epileptic fits. So, and they were smart enough, they were looking at transitioning. They bought a place in town, and essentially there, they were transitioning just so, look, go and get a feel of that, just in case we both die, get a good feel of that. And they wanted to, make sure that that property is going to be his when they pass away. And also that they had investment property there for him. I said, well, why wait for it? Let's do it now. So we can set up a special disability trust. He's on a disability insurance, a special disability pension. We can put a family home in here. So the home that he's transitioning to, we can put it in there. Likewise, we can put the investment property in there. Now, the way it works is, first off, there's concessions. When we transfer those properties over, there's no stamp duty and there's also no capital gains tax. So there's an incentive there to look after the disabled. Likewise, from a social security point of view, if he had those assets outside, he'd be up for assets and incomes test. But the home that they earmarked for him that they're going to transfer in, that's excluded from the assets test. Likewise, I said, well, the investment property is switching in. How much is that worth? And I said, well, 600,000. Now, at the moment, you can have an additional, quite apart from the family home, $832,000, which is assets test exempt. So they could put both of those properties in there, bit of super as well, and then suddenly their son's going to get the full disability pension, but also going to get a lot more on top of that one. So it's much better than Family Protection Trust. And the last sort of trust that I want to talk about, and these are all available in that book, Family Wealth Protection, Child Maintenance Trust. Child Maintenance Trust, if you or your children, you got kids, have to pay child support. Child support generally comes after tax. So the tax office literally take money out of your PAYG or anything you do, your BAS, it's loaded on after tax. So the tax office looks after child support. So there's a child support agency within the tax office. Most of the time it's assessed on your taxable income, which unfortunately we see a lot of tradies try to do a lot of cash so they don't have to pay so much child support, which I don't like at all. Whereas if you've got a company, we can actually transfer a business asset in there. Like I had one guy who transferred a tractor in there, transferred the tractor in there and then leased it back to his business. So what happened there is his business paid leasing fees for the tractor and then it went down to the children. The benefit there, the children were taxed at adult tax rates. So it meant he's effectively getting a tax deduction for paying child support instead of post-tax there as well. So we've learned a lot today, and I think there's a lot there. You're going to need to listen to it again, read the book. The main thing is educate yourself because we are going to go into harder times, and essentially the government's going to have to raise taxes somewhere. And look, if you had a look at the productivity summit, they're actually talking about a federal government land style tax. So it's going to be based on the size of property that you have, the acreage. And if they do that, then we've just got to be really careful and protect ourselves. And that's why having our wealth somewhere, it's better to have the protection than not have the protection. Now, if you're going to buy a new property or you're going to, if you're going to sell your property and then buy a new family home, then what we do is we put the cash in the Family Protection Trust. We buy the new home, but we use the bank and then we use your money for the deposit and it's going to be nil interest rate there. And you do the same with the investment property. So again, it depends on where you want to sit anything. But the benefit out of that is liaison between myself and Matt is that once we get this structure set up, so it's a once-off cost, which is important because we're building a castle that's going to withstand 100 years at least. And essentially, once we build it, what we do from there is that you'll get in touch with Matt and say, look, Matt, where should I put this? Should it be my SMSF? Should it be my Family Protection Trust? Or should it be in my own name? And I have 100% gearing. So you've got that. And the same thing with the kids. Help the kids up on the property ladder, but don't give them money. I see some of the most astute property investors in Australia And they're talking, openly talking on YouTube, saying, "Oh yeah, I've given my kids money to buy a property." And you're thinking, "Are you an idiot?" I mean, I love to tell them the story because how they're going to feel. And I can tell you, most of the family law court cases, guess what they are? Dad and mum arguing that the gift wasn't a gift, it was a loan. Whereas if you've got a loan agreement that's already signed, it's easy. So anyway, so that's all the strategies. I've got a couple of questions here. Let's see here. Um, Matthew, is there statute of limitations, how long the exes have to come for your estate? In Victoria, yes. So in Victoria, if this includes de factos as well. In Victoria, if you've been divorced, then essentially it's all over. New South Wales, no, there's no statute of limitations. Kelly's case, Kelly and Clark, they went back 30 years. And so the first thing is, in fact, I've had a couple of clients up in the Northern Rivers, believe it or not. There's a guy there who wasn't very well off. Well, he was having some health concerns. I've been married a couple of times. Two boys there. He held the shares in the family business. And I told the boys about that, and they said, "Well, Dad, we've got to get you up to Queensland." I said, "Well, if something happens to your dad, you just got to go and do a, weekend at Bernie's, get him in the car, take him out to Queensland, and drop him over the border, so the exes can't get it anyway." So look, I see. I hate to make light of some of these stories, but I see. I've had to do it for people who've, do this before they've gone to prison because the problem about that is if you go to prison, then there's a whole lot of other financial penalties and stuff like that. So the Proceeds of Crime and, Victims Compensation Act. So again, I see a lot of stories. My life's blessed because it's like a reality show and everyone's family is different. So I love it and I get a lot of joy out of it. But the main thing is, look, it's hard enough to build wealth, and we're at a good inflection point in Australia. The market's pretty high. Cash out some of it if you can. Take your winnings while you can, and then set yourself up and protect it because I can tell you once the lawyers get a target on your back, if you've got $1 or $2 million on your bullseye. So just to give you an idea, and I'll close with this one. Miller and Taylor case over in West Australia, the poor old digger died in 2013 with $600,000 property. So that's nothing compared to what people have these days. He done a will like 12 years ago, and when his wife died, he left everything to his two kids. Hadn't updated the will, but he's sort of been on and again and off again with a lady friend. She got up and they said, "Well, she's a de facto. She's rightly entitled." So that's the first thing they'll argue. So she's de facto. She's entitled to make a claim. So whereas the two kids were getting 300 each, the court goes through, there's around about 24 different things. So you end up doing like a 170-page document, why they deserve it and all that, because you have to show why you should be provided for. It's not what's equitable, it's why you as a person should be provided for. Anyway, she got up $240,000. She got, so it was okay. But her legal fees were 199,000.
Mm.
The estates were $90,000, and each of the kids were up around about $70,000. So there was only $100,000 left. And anyway, because the whole idea, like if you've ever been in divorce is me against you, me against my spouse. So there's only a couple. So over time, both, unless it gets nasty, both work out why am I paying all the lawyers? Because that money's just coming out of our own pocket. It doesn't make sense. But when you've got an estate and you might have 5 or 6 people in it, like stepchildren, ex-spouses, and all that, they don't care because they have what we call no win, no fee lawyers. And they just go to town because they know if you're in there and you're able to make a claim, they'll make a claim for you. And they'll want it to go for as long as possible, or at least until their house is renovated. I'm sure, Matt, you probably need to go and get a few family provision lawyers on your books to go down the track.
Absolutely. Oh, that's been brilliant, Grant. Can you tell me how long, what's de facto? How long do you need to be together to be
Two,
considered? 2 years?
yeah, 2 years.
Yep.
And they wrote in around about 10 years ago.
Yep.
Um, because there was a whole lot, each state had its own de facto legislation. Some were like 6 months, some were a year, 2 years. And so what they did is all the state governments said, look, this is too much for us to handle because we don't want to bog down our courts. So what they did is they wrote into the Family Law Act that the Family Law Act applies to marriages and de facto relationships where they've been living for more than 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there ever a time it's too late to come and see you? So you've got established business, been going some time. Um,
No, best
can
thing
you
to
come
do
in?
it. Best
Yep.
thing to do it is while you can. Like if you know you're going to go broke in 3 to 6 months, then we need to work yesterday. I can. It's hard because there is a clawback for 4 years for the trustee in bankruptcy if we
Right.
do gifts. But what we're finding in practice is that even if we do it when you know you're going to go broke, what happens there? It puts in a because they haven't ever like that gift and loan back scenario. They haven't tried to attack it yet. I just think it's going to be too hard if it's done properly. And what they do is they'll say, okay, well, we'll settle for 5 or 10 cents in the dollar. I saw one client who, this was through another advisor who used that strategy, $10 million tax bill, and they settled for $1 million.
Right. Okay.
So again, mate, it's like insurance, like mortgage insurance, home insurance. You do that, why wouldn't you have wealth insurance? It doesn't
Mm.
make sense.
What, two more very quick questions. Been really
Yep.
generous with your time. Thank you so much. So first home buyers who haven't got parental gifts, etc. Newly married, first home, should they come and see you for asset protection? Is that for
I
them?
would say first home buyers, so you probably depends on the demo they're at. So if they're first home buyers, I would say, well, it depends, particularly these days with a 5% deposit. Do you know what I mean? It's probably not worthwhile.
Yep.
I would though then flip it around and say, it's quite funny. I was saying to you before, I've got a lot of people who are very, very excited about crypto. Not my style. I just think it's, I have people saying, oh, that you go onto YouTube or TikTok, it's going to grow 20% for the next 40 years. It's like, well, no, it's not going to do that. Nothing does that.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of people there. And then a lot of people have got quite a sizable balance in their super. A lot of people don't know, but find out what's in your super. And once you get up to combine $100,000, what I always recommend in crypto, I say, look, now go and see a good mortgage broker like yourself, and you can borrow at 80% LVR. If you've got $200,000, which a lot of people, when they're in their early 30s, 35s, if they've been working for 10 years, 200,000, you can borrow 700 or 800, and suddenly you're a, SMSF millionaire. You're well and truly on that path. So again, what I've seen over my time, and I might be biased, is that the people I know who do really, really well out of super and make a lot of money are the ones who've had long-term property plans. In fact, what I say to a lot of people, particularly around their 35, 40, when you're buying your property, you need to probably go and get a buyer's advocate, and I'm sure you know quite a few.
Yep.
And what you want is not to buy what's hot now. If you're 40, you want to look at age 70 because that's when you want to max your capital gain. So that you want your maximum capital because if I can grow $1 million to $2 million in Adelaide, well, okay, I'm happy days. But if I can grow that to $4 million because I'm up at, 1770, well, I don't know, Bunda, but look, who knows? If you can find that spot, then you're key. And the best thing about it is also that if you buy that place now you can't go and stay in it because that's a breach of super rules. But when you retire, that place you can pull out of your superannuation fund, sell your existing family home, put the cash in there, pull your other home out of there, your new family retirement home. Great strategy. So you're forward looking as to the place you want to live in when you retire.
Great, and we just so happen to know someone who's very good with those market predictions. That's Matthew Clark at 80 Metrics Property Investment Negotiation
Is
Solutions.
that, is
Thank
that,
you,
is
thank
that,
you.
there you go, there you
Yeah,
go.
and last question, we've got a few attendees who have got wealth and a number of properties. They're married or single, and they've got a number of properties, but PAYG, not running their own businesses.
Yep,
Um,
perfect.
what would the benefit be for those attendees to come and see you?
Wealth protection, family law, recycling the debt in through a family protection trust. The big one for them though is self-managed super funds.
Yeah,
That's the smarter place because if you got it in your own name, I'm not going to say you're a fool, but you're a fool. So do you mean? But you don't know what you don't know. So I can only tell you because I've written all the books on the stuff, so I know how the game is played. And I think that as we go down the track, you are going to find the CGT, discount is going to go drop it. They are. They just have to. As I told you, you sit down and you can just do your numbers on a yellow pad and do it through Grok or ChatGPT. This government's in real trouble. And it's not this government. Would I say Labor and Liberal? They're both idiots as far as I'm concerned. But if I can leave it a bit of a story, is markets go up and down. You and I have seen it many times. I remember the GFC because I was working with one of my clients was Macquarie Bank, and I remember going and seeing those guys, and they were white-faced because they had to roll over their debt facilities. And we're talking about debt facilities, we're talking about billions of dollars, and they couldn't get money anywhere. And so it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Particularly with all their properties because they've got commercial properties. Anyway, things were pretty bad in 2008, 2009. And guess what? I guarantee it's going to happen again. It's just everything works in cycles. Go back and look at it. And so with that one, 2009 came and I was out for lunch and I'd seen a beautiful three-story apartment on Victoria Street, Potts Point. And it was three-bedroom, designed by Rene Rivkin, the famous share trader, and just been passed in an auction for 1.28. Beautiful place. I'd had a few red wines, being a smart ass. So I said, "Oh, I'll offer you 950." And the agent laughed and said, I can't take it to the client." I said, "Well, you have to because you're an agent. You have to, by law, you have to." 10 minutes later, came back. She'll take it for 960 if you can settle in 30 days. I
Wow.
got that and then sold it like 6 years later. And I actually used it for my funny thing, it was resi, but don't tell anyone this secret. So it's resi. So I lived in it, but I uh, you can transfer business property into your self-managed super fund, but you can't transfer resi in there unless it's like more motels, bed and breakfast farms, all that sort of stuff. So what I did is because it was dual, the council had dual use. So what I did is I took my business and I put it all in there. So I converted the whole thing to offices, which was pretty easy, as you can imagine. Put it inside my self-managed superannuation fund. There was no tax on the way in because it was principal place of residence. I left it inside my self-managed superannuation fund, and then after a year or two, my business moved up to Queensland. So I just closed it down, turned it into resi again, and we're off and running. So again, got lots of strategies up my sleeves, lots of strategies.
It's brilliant. And how to that negative gearing in your SMSF, that's brilliant way to reduce your tax. So yeah, amazing, Grant. I can't thank you enough. I got a huge amount out of the session. So for the attendees, please reach out. We can Grant's kindly agreed to meet with anyone who attended for an initial consultation, see if there's any benefit. Sort of, you really can't afford not to, go and see him, especially if you've got a number of properties there. For all those who attended, there's going to be a little prize sent your way in the next few days. So not
A
you,
couple of
Grant,
bottles of Grange
not
from
not
Matthew,
you, Grant,
beautiful.
you. But the rest of you, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you so much, Grant. It was really informative, and all the attendees just flick us a message, and we'll get you set up for a time.
Okay, we'll get this because I went through so much. Um, it's probably watch it, a couple of times again. Get the
Yeah,
book like $3. As long as you can watch it, you can do it on your computer or whatever. You don't have to have those Kindle things.
yep,
But you can get the Kindle app on your mobile phone or on here. And just read it because there's lots and lots of juicy stuff in there. You'll have an understanding because sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times to do it. But
yeah.
look,
We'll
thanks for
send
all for
out the
coming
link.
and look forward
Yeah.
to catching up with you. And we're going to have a lot of fun. And thank you for having me on and sharing your audience with me, Matthew. It's been fantastic.
Absolutely, Grant. We'll send out the link to everyone who attended for Grant's book, and some more details to book in their time. Thanks,
Okay.
Grant.
Enjoy yourselves. I'll be in Fiji next week, so I'm looking forward to that. So.
Yeah, we
We'll have
won't
a
book you
Fiji
up for
winner
next
for you,
week.
Matthew. Okay, mate.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.